Hi guys, in today's video lesson we're going to be looking at the ways that you can actually read a movie the same way that you would read a book. That is, what are the literary elements of a novel and how do those translate when the book story is actually put onto the film and onto screen. So we're going to look at some of the language and some of the techniques that are used in filming a piece of literature as opposed to just reading a novel form of a piece of literature. To get started, it's kind of helpful to understand how novels and movies are actually different. If you think about the average book, it can have multiple points of view. That is, different characters can narrate different chapters. It can move around all over the place with multiple storylines and plots. There's no length limit on books. I mean, people don't tend to buy books that get really big, but for the most part, an author can take as much time to tell a story as they want to, and they can always add sequels and things. A novel can shift around in time. It can start off in a very contemporary setting and move to the past. It can time travel to the future, and within one book, a multiple number of years can be covered. And there's no real limits to how many settings or characters you put into a novel. Your character could visit a different place of the world or a different imaginary world in every chapter. A novel can be imaginative. There's no limits to what, it doesn't have to stick to the reality of this contemporary world. And obviously a novel is available in print. It's something that you read the words in some format, whether it's in a textbook or even an ebook, but you're still reading words and translating that into your brain. On the other hand, movies have to kind of tell the story in a linear way. They have to go in a straight line. What happens first, what happens second, what happens third. They have a limited time frame to tell the story. Most movies are someplace between an hour and a half to 2 hours. Budget often is a big part of what can and can't go into a movie. So the budget might limit, for example, how many different locations you can have because it costs money every time you have to move your cast and your crew to another spot, to another set. How many characters you can have. Every character is another actor that has to be paid. How many costumes have to be created. And the movie has to be visually realized. In a novel, you can have this really imaginative fantasy thing, but in the movie, you have to find some way to show that to the audience. It can't just exist in their brains. And the movie, though, in addition, where the book only has the print and the words, a movie can use the visuals and can also use audio, everything from obviously the sound of the actors' voices to a soundtrack to sound effects and other sorts of things that help you get that other dimension in a film. Another thing that's helpful is to think about all the different things that have to happen to turn a book into a movie. First of all, you take a screenwriter who has to take the original story and decide what parts of it are going to be told and in what order, what's going to be, and it has to all be translated mostly to dialogue, that the characters will say these words. You usually don't have a lot of narration in a film. Then you have some sort of producer who determines the budget, how much money can be spent. The director comes in and based on that budget will choose the number of locations, will cast the actors, will decide on the camera angles, exactly where that camera is going to be placed and other sorts of visual elements. The actors come in and then perform their roles. And then finally an editor or multiple editors come in and cut up the film that's already been taken, arrange the scenes, add the music, add the sound effects. So there's a lot that happens in the process of taking the novel to the screen. Usually we're used to English classes just talking about reading books, but the New Common Core Standards actually focuses on something called visual literacy. And this is the idea of being able to read non-print text. That is, to read a picture the same way that you would be able to read a short story or a poem. And this means that you need to have some basic understanding of how camera angles, lighting, focus, cropping, all of these will affect your response to a visual images. You have to understand that all media, all things that you would consume as a media piece is a construct of some sort. Someone has created this and has determined what you will and won't see. Then you have to be able to form meaning from the picture that you see and understand how the construction of the media is going to affect your response to what you're seeing. Now here's one example that might help you understand what I'm talking about by media being constructed. If you had the original image here, now you can go through the center picture and see what you're looking at. The camera angle still had to be placed at a particular point, but just using the example of how you crop the picture. So the original image is in the middle, and you can see that there's someone that's down on the ground, someone that's just holding a gun, and someone else that's feeding them a water bottle. If you crop the image on the left, you create this negative impact. It has the effect that this gun is actually pointing directly at this person's head. But if you crop it so you don't see that person on the side, it looks like you have a soldier helping someone who's wounded by giving them a drink. So you can crop the picture. Just how you cut up the image creates a different effect for how you're going to feel about the images that you're seeing and how you interpret what actually happened, even though the camera itself doesn't show you all of these things. So that's how someone comes in and constructs the media to give a certain impression. So the next couple of slides, we're going to take a little time to just introduce you to some of the very basic ideas of the language of film, the kinds of things that are available for a director, a producer, an editor to help construct the image that you're seeing on the screen. Now, one of them is a term that we call pacing, and this is the director's choice of what to show and how to show that. For example, the director of To Kill a Mockingbird decides to show this scene where the camera takes a lot of time to show this swing and a child playing and doesn't show Tom Robinson trying to escape from jail. Now, you would think that an audience would really like to see this escape attempt, right? You've got a prison, you've got all those elements of action and suspense. You've got a prison, you've got nighttime, you've got people with guns, all that stuff there that we'd expect to see and that an audience would really appreciate. But instead, the director uses that time on screen to show a child's point of view of a swing set in the backyard, or the tire swing in the backyard. And this is showing that the director is trying to put the family relationship at the center of the story, Scout's transition from childhood into seeing the adult world, as opposed to making this an action suspense type of movie. One of the tools that any director has at their disposal is the camera angle. And there's some different camera angles that are used. So there's some of the basic vocabulary. A close-up. A close-up is where you see mostly faces, and it helps to create this sense of intimacy, this connection between the characters by showing them in the same scene so tightly cropped up. Or you can have a medium shot, and this is where most of the actor's body is going to be in the shot, and it's really effective for showing personal relationships. You can see the distance between the characters, you can see their body language, and the director can help show you, without telling you, how these two people get along and how their relationship is and how they're connected. Or you can go to the other extreme and have what's called a long shot, or sometimes referred to a wide shot or an establishing shot. And these help to show the context or the setting. So you see the character, but you also see where they are and what else is going on around them. So if you look at the first picture, we see obviously Atticus straight up in the middle of the shot, but you can see the rest of the people sitting around, the other attorneys, and then you've got the balcony up here where the African Americans are watching the whole procedure. And the same with the other bit here, you see Bob Ewell coming in, and there's Atticus confronting them, but you can see the other people in the background and what they're saying and doing. So it helps to show what else is happening in the film. Now, Thomas Berger actually identified specific grammar that's used in creating television and film. And this has to do with the signifier of the shot, the definition, and then what it shows. So we just talked about things like close-up, medium shot, long shot, full shot. But you can also look at how the camera moves. If the camera is going to pan across something to give you this sense of connection and social relationship. If the camera is going to look up at someone, if you're shooting someone from underneath, it makes them seem more powerful because they're bigger. If you shoot down on someone, it creates suspense, makes them seem more powerless. And then you can fade in or fade out or wipe or cut, and all of those affect your pacing of the scene and how you react to it as it goes. So there's lots of different techniques and tools that any director, editor, camera person has at their disposal, the same way that an author has all of these different literary techniques that they can use to create the specific effect that they want to have on the reader, or in this case, on the viewer. Once the director's figured out where to place the camera, they can also experiment with lighting. Lighting is really, really crucial in creating the mood or the atmosphere. And it also can help tell you some things about the characters. Where's the light coming from, and where do you put the character in relationship to that light? If you light someone from underneath, like imagine those old campfires where you put a flashlight underneath, it creates this idea that you're some sort of villain. If you light them from above, it's like a halo and they seem sort of angelic. Is the lighting going to be harsh or bright, soft or shadowed? And one thing to keep in mind when you look at To Kill a Mockingbird, this movie was made in 1963, when they certainly had the technology for color pictures, but the director specifically chose to shoot it in black and white. You might ask yourself, why would a director do that with this particular film? How does that help to underscore the themes and the ideas in the movie? As we've seen from all the literature we've been studying this year, symbolism is an important tool that an author has to help create these sorts of universal meanings and deeper context of what they're writing. Symbolism can also happen in film, usually in a much more visual way. And one of the great things about this movie you're going to watch is the opening credits. They're beautifully constructed. And watch how these opening credits, that might be something in another film, might be just kind of a throwaway way you got to get the actor's name in there somehow. But this helps to set the mood. It creates this idea of quiet, reflective sorts of feelings. It shows the cigar box with these mementos of childhood. The pocket watch starts to tick, which gives you this idea of something that's old-fashioned in the past, of time going by. And then the various images and the pacing of it help to contribute this idea of this child's perspective, that this is going to be a coming-of-age story, that this is a sense of innocence that goes about it. It's really a beautiful sequence. So as you go to watch the film, I hope you pay close attention to that part. Where a novel or a book just has print or text on a page or some kind, or text on a screen, again, film has the visual, but they also have the audio, what you hear. And it's everything from the music and the soundtrack, as you know, music can really help change a mood and create a setting, but also the sound effects that they have. For example, the scene where Jem is sitting outside and he starts to hear something. You get that scratching of the branches from the tree, the wind, some sort of bird call. Jem calls for his dad. You get this scary or dramatic music starts to come up. The chairs are creaking, there's a squeaky sound, and immediately, if you've ever been left alone at the house as a kid or late at night, you start to hear that crazy noise, it brings you right back to that. So immediately you have this idea of suspense and this idea of scariness from the child's point of view, and that's all done through the sound effects. Okay, so it's your turn to become an expert in media literacy. So as we're studying the film in class this week, I want you to use that graphic organizer to start to capture your thoughts and impressions of how this story got translated to the film, paying particular attention to the video, that is the visual, and the audio, the music and sound effects kinds of aspects. So how did the literary aspects of the novel translate to the visual and sound elements of the film? And that's it. Bye.